Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. I'm sorry to be talking about business so much lately, but the problem is there's so much strange news going on in the world. There's not much stranger I could talk about that. So I could build conspiracy theories all day long, but I'd rather talk about some real things until the world calms down and we can have some fun again. But what I'm going to tell you today is all about the art of the deal. No, not that book from the 1980s that was ghost authored by that canary-headed 45th US president, but the actual way of making a deal these days. Now, I spent 2 decades making deals, a little more than 2 decades. And there's a proper way to do it and an improper way to do it. My way always yields results. First point that you have to remember is what you are capable of. All companies have different strengths. You might want to get into transportation, but it's going to cost you about $1 million to set up, and that's without getting your dangerous goods license or even any equipment. So if you have the chance to, I don't know, plant an orange grove, that might be a better use of your time if you have a lot of land. There's a business I've been eyeing for a time, and basically there's a little patch of land that's by a railroad tracks. So obviously it's not ideal for a house. But what it is ideal for is to run some three-phase power into it, allow trucks to hook up and be heated over the winter, and then they pay you for using the spot. Easy, low to no maintenance, and pretty easy to keep track of the financials in a book. I'm just waiting for the price to drop to somewhat affordable because it's a lot of renovations involved, and yeah, truckers like to have the same spot to go to every night. But it's a resource that we could pretty easily put together. The price of the property with a couple $1,000s and the electrician, and hey, we're golden. There's so many trucks in my area, they're always looking for somewhere to be, and mostly the people aren't staying there overnight. And those tracks are used mostly during, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So those guys will likely be on the load. That's the kind of deal you got to look for, where it's a turnkey business. You just got to make sure you have an electrician on call in case some poor fella can't get his truck cord to work, and you're sitting pretty. Back when I was in charge of things, I knew what my company could and could not do. Now, we had refrigerated units, reefers as they're known in the business, heated units. We had plated trailers. We had cooler trailers, which as far as I know were unique to us because we took our old refrigerated boxes and put them on plated boxes and then kind of got a new trailer. They were better for heating than anything else, so I knew I could bid for any kind of freight that went in a trailer. I've experienced running flatbeds and lots of experience running containers. Those are a little bit harder to bid on because there's only certain areas that require a flatbed and there's only certain areas where you can get a container from. So you're pretty much locked in to those locations. So let's concentrate on a more wide open trailer market. You're going to wind up getting a contract here, there, anywhere because you need that to start your business. First thing to know is your pricing. I'm not going to tell you the golden formula because it changes all the time, but you want to cover your expenses and make a little bit of profit. So you're going to look at how much gas, salary, and maintenance you're spending, and roughly double that and charge the customer. It doesn't work out like that. Sometimes it works out better, sometimes it works out worse. But again, that's the selling point that you can make with the customer. You're saying, hey, I can do this better than anybody. You got freight going to Florida? I got a place they pick up freight from in Florida. It's no problem. I'll be able to cycle the units around and have your freight moving continually. Now, what you don't know is what I just said was an exaggeration. If you're the customer, I'm telling you, yeah, I got freight coming out of Florida. I've got hundreds of units, whatever it is. And that's where you get into the bluffing. Now, it's not misrepresenting yourself, it's just knowing what you are capable of. I might not be able to put 100 units on the road, and even 100 is ridiculous. Let's start with 10. But I know a lot of people, a lot of different companies that I could third party it out to. And yes, some contracts say no third parties, etc., etc. There's ways around that. So let's pretend I get an order shipping Molson Canadian because I happen to know where the factory is and it's easy to pick up from. I've dealt with them before, to somewhere in the States. Molson Canadian goes out everywhere in the United States. Where do I want to go? Well, let's stick with Florida. Because I live in Canada, this wonderful place, obviously I'm therefore going to need a heater or a refrigerated service. I'm going to be honest with you, there's not a whole lot coming out of Florida coming to Canada, because it's better to put it out by ship, it's better to put it out by almost any other way than by truck. That being said, there's still stuff coming out of Florida. But you got to do your research. You got to think, okay, this goes to St. Petersburg, Florida. So what are you going to do? You're going to open your Google, you're going to open your Canada 411, whatever it might be. You're just going to type in industry in St. Petersburg, Florida. And this is where you start earning your keep as a salesman. Because your truck can go down to St. Petersburg, then go across the city, hook up, and come back. Hey, you're golden. Rarely works like that. That's when you start cold calling. Now, this is where having friends in the business really help. But just being polite and making the right inquiries, that's where you can really make a lot of service. A lot of people don't know, well, not that they don't know, but they are not really ready to do that cold calling, and it can be pretty intimidating. St. Petersburg is not really big, not really small, but you got to be able to do your research. That being said, there's employment there. It's just whether their freight matches up with my stuff coming out of Toronto. That's all a question of logistics. You're trying to make 100% loaded miles going down, loaded miles coming back, establish a decent profit margin, and then you got to write it down. Now here's where things get finicky. Prices are one of those funny things. You might think it's easy to say, I have 2,000 penguins with top hats as miniatures, and I want to sell them to a toy company in New York. Yeah, that's fine, but the toy company might want them for, say, $4 a unit. It costs you $2 to produce it. That's great. Who's going to set up the transportation? This is where things get sticky. This is the real art of the deal. Because if you can pass those transportation costs off, you're making your double profit. If you have to absorb those transportation costs, you can still get by, but it's not going to be quite as profitable for you. And this is where you got to know how to write a contract. I was negotiating with these people at one point, and they signed a contract for me to sign and send back. Except I'm one of those psychos that actually reads stuff, the whole thing. Contracts are usually, well, the official contract is that page-long document. The individual contract for that one particular shipment is usually about 2 pages or so. And I was reading through it, and standard stuff, by taking this on, you promise to deliver service XYZ days, blah blah. And then it said, if a problem happens, you, as in me, the logistics guy, would be responsible for hiring a lawyer to whatever state or province that this infraction took in, and we'd have to hire two lawyers, one for them, one to represent ourselves, and guarantee the win. Like, what? I never agreed that. So, yeah, that contract, basically we started renegotiating at that point because I'm like, I'll move your freight under the standard terms, but I'm not guaranteeing any part of it because I'm not personally inspecting it. It's out of my responsibility. It's being picked up by a remote driver and driven to a remote location. So how can I go up in front of a court and say I inspected this, I made sure of its safety, I made sure it wasn't, nuclear, biological, or chemical or anything like that? I can't. But people will try to sneak that stuff in there. And the amount of people that don't read in the modern day and age surprises me greatly. I've never had to sneak anything like that in a contract, but I imagine I could have put in anything you want into the contracts and that the people will check the front. Yep, this is right, this is right, this is right, gone. I'll check four things to make sure it matches, and they just sign and send it back. It was technically my job to make sure our company was protected and to call back and renegotiate, because hopefully they have a master document they can delete stuff and reinsert it in. But this is where the minutia come into place. I would have never accepted that contract if they had told me about the clause about a lawyer. Now, prices, 2020 was the best example where freight prices dropped because companies knew we were only moving foodstuffs anywhere, so either take this price or leave it, and they knew that they were jobbing us. There was no negotiating with them because there were 10 other people operating the same exact service. As I said before, know what you are capable of, which is why you have to be a little more creative. Find that person who's not necessarily directly connected to the market, but they're at least trying to do business honestly. And the funny part is, when you offer a decent price, people are willing to do the job better. You'll always get scammers in there, and I'm sorry, that is the honest truth. But for the most part, people are much more willing to do whatever you have if you have an honest price. We had a major company, and I don't know how I feel about the morality or the legality was written into the contract. But basically, instead of just the truck driver coming off, leaving the skid on your dock, sign, you drive off, the truck driver had to take it wherever the person wanted. And since we didn't know what the shipper or receiver was thinking that day, we had to add all sorts of charges after the fact. Inside delivery, tailgate, all that sort of stuff. And inside delivery is one of the most insidious charges. It doesn't mean just taking it off and dropping on the inside. It means, going past the threshold. And there are places that want that. Put it over there in the corner. Okay, inside delivery, sign here. But the place I work for, I know the guy that was in charge of adding all that stuff because he had been a driver and he'd worked his way up the ranks until he was in billing. And he knew the places. You don't need a tailgate there. That's 4 boxes, a total of 50 pounds. That's 12 pounds, 13 pounds each. You can easily lift that off. You're not putting your tailgate down for nothing. Or the only way you can get this is by going up 3 flights of stairs, so inside delivery. And people were always surprised that we had such a resource on our side. Again, he was very good at what he did, and a lot of people were pissed off because they got extra charges after the fact. Well, sorry to tell you, it happens. But that's the thing. We negotiated in our contract with the supplier that these charges would automatically be included, and the people were surprised when they got the bill. That's unfortunate, but this is a major company that honestly doesn't care. That's the way they do business, and that's the way they will continue to do business. That's one of the coups, though. I had another manager who negotiated, again, pretty major national, kind of multinational business, but the guy wanted the contract so badly, instead of doing due diligence like I did, he would just fill in whatever it took to get the numbers. The funny part is, my best friend works not very far from there. And he says every 6 months, you get brand new trucks pulling in because they realize how bad the rates are. But he wanted to put this bad because when you apply for new business, you want to show them, hey, I'm working with all these big companies, they trust me. So that's why you should trust me too. And it is a negotiating tactic. This guy went the opposite way. He thought he was going to be able to use that as our key to get into all these other places. We were losing money hand over fist. We had to hire extra staff because one of the things that they do is they send you a tender, which is pretty standard in the industry. Just a piece of paper saying these 6 skids are going to be ready in South Carolina Wednesday. Then it was our job to call South Carolina up, and half the time they sent us the tender before they sent the shipper the tender. There's still a lot of places that are basically building up to the last minute that your people get there. So I called South Carolina because I got the first order and I'd been in the meeting. I'd worked with these people before. So I got it and called up South Carolina. They said, we don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, here's the order number, no order number in the system. Like I said, this major company had not even communicated with them. We eventually had to hire a brand new logistics person just to do this full time. And the rates were not worth it. Like the South Carolina was like $500 for like 6 skids coming to Toronto area. And okay, that's LTL. I could build around that. But we can't build around that when they don't know about it, because I have to start looking for other skids and freight in the area that we can put on. That way make a full truckload and at least make some profit off of it. Whereas this company, which was their right, was ordering 6 skids in South Carolina, 2 skids in North Dakota, 3 skids in California. It's just like, no, we're not set up for this. And like I said, my friend, every 6 months, he knows it to the day. This is the day that the changeover happens. And it's never the same companies twice because they get burned. But he wasn't really my boss, but he thought he was. He was so intent on getting this deal, and he built his reputation around it, that he basically cost himself his job. Meanwhile, I was working on a contract with Grumman. Yeah, Grumman, ever heard of them? Grumman Aerospace, the people that are building the Orion space capsule and the new arm for the Moon space station. Yeah, I was working with them. That's a government company. They got money behind them. Now, I never finalized that deal. Silverlight's not perfect, and also other things intervened. But I still got a lot further than anybody else. I'm showing them, this is a military contractor. They got money to spare. We get in with this, we're laughing. But no, we're chasing around this multinational company instead that is trying to nickel and dime us to death. That's the difference between a good negotiator and a bad negotiator. And who would rather have the retail store over the defense contractor? Again, knowing what you can actually do and knowing what is being offered is an integral part of the deal. There's a certain point where the person you're negotiating at has a bottom line. This is the highest they can go, the lowest they can go. And there's nothing you can do that's going to change that. And trust me, everything is so competitive these days that bottom line is frequently the first thing that they put out. You can still try to negotiate, and sometimes they have wiggle room, but that's not the way the business works anymore. That's a 1990s way to operate in a 2023 environment. So basically, remember, it's important to develop contacts, but don't become a golfer. Golfing is just so stupidly expensive these days, and people aren't into it the way they used to be. I used to be not an avid golfer, but I'd screw around on the weekend with friends. Never met anybody through golf that I didn't already know. But there's two places that a lot of deals used to be made. One was the golf course, the other one were gentlemen's clubs, shall we say, where women would entertain you for money, legally. The business has moved away from that, and one of my, well, actually three of my closest friends work in the industry right now. I could call them up, hey, I need 6 trucks for Tuesday to go down to whatever, and they would negotiate with me. If they had the equipment, it would be free. And looking at the way things are right now, their equipment would be free. But see, that's the art of doing a deal. I call them first. I have other people I don't know as well, but could still do the job. And I'd make sure there was enough profit in there that I would be able to make the customer happy and still make my third party logistics people happy, and still have enough for me to be worth my time. Because that's the one thing that people forget. What's your time worth? If you're a multi-millionaire, yeah, your time's worth more, but the same token, you're in a better position to do more for the people around you. Startup businesses, yeah, your time is valuable, but you can't afford to charge too much. It's really the balance that most people don't get. They think because I'm Walmart and the Waltons, I'm picking on them because everybody knows they're rich, although to be honest, they're pretty good with the rates that they pay. Or at least they used to be. I try not to deal with them because of the amount of time that you spend waiting there. That's the only reason why not. But like I said, for business people, they're pretty in tune. And, it's tough to avoid them forever. Sooner or later, you'll be stuck with them. But with all that being said, I'll end this for now. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Silverlight Show. If you did, please like, share. It always helps to spread the word. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Click on the bell to get notifications whenever we put out a new episode. We hope you have a fantastic day.